Good morning, Javelina. Is it Friday, October 26th? I think at this point we are now roughly 21 hours to go until the start of the 2023 Javelina 100. We are going to be doing our pre-race show here. I am joined by two amazing co-hosts, good friend, Boulderite, pro runner, father, husband, Mr. Adam Mary. Adam, good morning.
Hello. Thanks, Debo.
Of course, Abby Hall, a former Boulderite, now our Arizona resident co-host here today. Also great pro runner, champion, ultra runner, Abby Hall. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Good to be with you.
This is great. And for those who are just listening, I'd encourage you to also check us out on YouTube because we're broadcasting poolside.
Smash that like button.
Thank you. And yeah, speaking of which, Ryan would never forgive me if I didn't say, please do subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. Anyway, so yeah, today we're going to just be doing a quick preview of tomorrow's race. It's going to start at 6 a.m. local time here just outside of Phoenix in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Adam and Abby and I are going to provide our commentary and analysis about what you can expect in tomorrow's race. Of course, the good people at Aravaipa and Mountain Outpost are going to be doing a full live stream of the entire race tomorrow, so you will be able to watch all the action. And our goal here is to just set the context for that action. So maybe just quickly before we get into it, guys, run a show for our audience. After today's sort of preview show, tomorrow we don't really have anything planned. Again, watch the live stream. Make sure you follow along all day. And then Sunday, Abby, Adam, and I are going to be back here for a post-race recap show. We're going to hope to bring in some of the top performers for a conversation about what happened out on the race course. And we'll summarize the golden ticket chase and, you know, all the storylines that emerge from tomorrow's drama. With all that being said, maybe first let's start with Javelina, and Abby, we'll start with you. You're now the Arizona resident.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the race. I have some like historical stuff I want to go through, but maybe just top line first.
Yeah, absolutely. I moved to Flagstaff a couple years ago. And so my parents actually spend their winters down here in Fountain Hills. So Cordis and I have been joining them. And so, yeah, last year was our first year doing a good stretch down here. So I actually got to spend I've gotten to spend a good amount of time over in the park here where Javelina is going down. And it's a really special course and area. So the primary loop that most of the runners will be doing is called the Pemberton Loop. But then on the first loop, you actually do a slightly extended loop with the trail called the Escondido Trail. And so actually that first loop, like that little add-on there is a little bit more like in and out of washes, a little rockier. And so, you know, I think the tendency, especially as I was like doing research on what people have been training and stuff, is to think of this as kind of like, you know, like a Bobo Trail in Boulder or something where it's like a flat, fast gravel path. But it's definitely like a notch or two up from that, I would say. Yeah. So like the first part of each Pemberton loop, runners are going up a somewhat rocky incline. Like I would say it's right on the edge of like me being able to ride my gravel bike on it or not. For a reference point. So they go up that kind of rockier side and then down a really nice butter, like single track that actually last year on a run there, I even found tucked behind a cactus, a little sweeper. They literally groom half of this thing. It's like literally the width of the trail. And I found this little wide broom that like attaches to like an ATV or something. I was like, I love this. But I don't think the south side of the loop sees that kind of grooming. It's definitely a bit rockier.
I bet it's the Aravaipa team that goes out there. And
yeah, exactly.
Treats it like the Zen garden that it is. So.
Straight up.
So each loop has like 1,500 feet of climbing, I think, which is definitely a solid amount still. It's not nothing. Yep. So you definitely still see runners that are, you know, coming in with like wrecked quads and things like that, because over the course of 5 loops, that subtle downhill starts to add up, especially when you're just like cranking out miles.
It's like a slower, fast race, more or less.
Yeah, Abby, real quick with your course experience, what do you think are the chances that racers or crew are going to see a Javelina tomorrow?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I feel like they do like a little migration at this point. Like at least like up in Flagstaff, they all start leaving Flagstaff and going down the rim to like Sedona and stuff. I'm not sure about like their patterns here.
I'm trying to see one.
I love them so much. They're so sweet. In the spring, like their babies are out a lot and they're pretty special.
I saw on the internet that a pack of Javelina completely destroyed a local golf course recently,
Just
stampeding through.
My parents will get them like going through their trash.
I guess we should
knocking it over. over.
You know, a javelina is sort of like a wild hog of some kind.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Desert hog. So.
Yeah. And this race is historic. So I want to come back and talk about the course in a little bit, but I pulled out some fun historical stats here for our audience. The race started in 2003, which means this is the 20th running. Wow. And in a sport as sort of young as ours, 20 years is like one of the older 100-milers out there, especially here in North America. I went up and looked at the 2003 finishers. There was 81. This year, there's over 800 people in the 100-miler. Wow. And I know they had a huge wait list too. Wow. So they probably could have had 1,500 plus in just the 100-mile race. They will have 1,500 total runners across the 100-miler, the 100K, and the 31K. And in 2003, Stephanie Errett, female, won overall that year. Wow. 17 hours, 38 minutes. Wow. Men's winner was 18 hours and 5 minutes. Like I said, 81 total finishers. So just a little historical context there. Now, as we were just talking about before we went live, the men's course record is just under 13 hours. Dakota Jones managed to do that last year. The only person to go under 13 hours, 12:58. And the women's course record, the great Camille Herron ran 14:03, I think in 2021, 2 years ago. So anyway, yeah, like I said, about 1,500 runners this year. Abby, Adam, I know neither of you have run the race before. Any personal history at the event before we started to go back into the course profile and stuff?
No history for me. I'm looking forward to seeing this party, the Halloween costumes. I hope some of the racers have a good costume. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, last year, Cordis and I and my parents actually volunteered overnight at an aid station. That was so fun. So we were at the Javelina headquarters aid station all night, just like watching mid-pack to back of the pack runners coming in, and just like so inspiring. Super cool.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's one of the reasons why people love this race. Yeah. And I'm embarrassed to admit this is my first time at Javelina. It's a race I've always wanted to attend. But a lot of people like coming just because of the Halloween vibe. It has almost like a Burning Man element to it. I've heard the Jackass aid station, which is on the far side of the course, tomorrow night turns into a little bit of an outdoor disco of sorts. I don't know if you want to paint the picture of like the costumes, the Halloween element, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so because it's a looped format, I think it's really cool in that like runners are seeing their crew regularly and the crew's not moving. So the crew is having this actually pretty nice day, like kind of in the tent camp, hanging, catching up with friends. There's food trucks, coffee trucks. Like most people are in great costumes, and a lot of the runners are in costumes too, which I just think is like a real hoot to see. Like last year we were next to like Dakota and his crew, and to see like Dakota coming in so serious, like late in an ultra, and have like a cat nose on is just like the greatest thing.
Perfect.
Like so serious with like whiskers, like chugging his drink or whatever. Like I just love that. So it like adds a fun twist to it to just remember like, hey, we're just all out here like running around the desert, being crazy people, and it's a good time. And I think, you know, that's like super like American ultra too, right? Like, especially after a summer of, you know, serious racing, like UTMB action to like, you know, the one thing you always hear about Javelina is like, it's total party. And like, it's like kind of this end of the season, like wherever we've been this season, we'll all get together and have a good time in the desert.
Yeah. Abby texted me yesterday saying, hey, are we doing costumes for the show?
Oh,
and I had been thinking about this week. I was thinking like, how funny would it be if just like without context, none of us acknowledged it, but we were all wearing Halloween costumes on the pre-race show.
Well, if I would have, I was going to try to dress up as you, man. I couldn't find a pair of orange speed pants, otherwise I would have.
Amazing.
Speaking of partying, I have to quickly read a text message I just received from Kim Gaylord. One sec. So I was just talking to Abby and Adam about this, but 10 years ago, the great Hal Kerner won the Javelina 100. Hal, who is a hero of mine when I came to the sport, absolute icon and legend, two-time Western States champion. Last night in Boulder was Scott Jurek's 50th birthday party. Hal Kerner was there, apparently not on his best behavior, and he's on his way to Arizona now to take part in Javelina again for the fourth time. He's won this race twice. And what Kim Gaylord said was full rager, super fun, and Debo heads up for Hal at Javelina. He did the ultimate by partying and dancing hard all night and is now flying to Arizona to run Javelina. Can't remember when he said he last ran 100, but wow, the ultimate legend, way to go into a race. So anyway, shout out to Hal. And then the other reason I wanted to bring this up was in 2013, when Hal won the race last, 10 years ago, he ran 14:56. The course record is now 12:58. So I think this is illustrative of the advancement that's taken place in the sport. All-time legend Hal Kerner, now 2 hours slower than the fastest time on the course, which was again put together by another person who really looks up to Hal, Dakota Jones, last year.
Yeah, I think we all look up to Hal, man. I hope when I'm his age, I can be raging, running 100. It's so epic, dude.
So
Yeah, that text is not gossip. It's just free trail fantasy intel, you know?
Exactly.
It's important that people know.
Yeah. So probably don't put Hal in your top 5 tomorrow. He may be battling a little bit of a hangover, but yeah, shout out to Hal. So the other thing that we should talk about is the golden ticket chase. Like, we should just acknowledge that here before we kind of go into the fields. Both you guys have competed for golden tickets in the past. Maybe just set that up for the audience.
Yeah, golden ticket races, they're no joke, you know? But it's really exciting. I feel like it brings a certain element to a race, because there's like, in every race, every golden ticket race, there's many racers who have the potential, right? And so it brings out this like fierce competitiveness. Certainly early on, I've heard and I've seen, right, from previous splits, that first loop here is like pretty fast. People usually go out pretty hard. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, when I got a ticket, I was not going for it or planning for it. And I think that's also an interesting element here where it was that you as well?
No, I was like, flex. That's
awesome. No, I don't mean that as a flex, but I think it sounds scarier to me to like chase a ticket.
Yeah.
Where I'm like where that's the goal. But when they're like the pressure's off, it feels a little different.
Yeah, totally.
And so I feel for like some of the runners where you can see on the ultra sign boards, like few races stacked up, like ticket hunting, like that's definitely like putting yourself out in the line. So like kudos to these runners who are like really going for it in with like an intention.
Yes.
Yeah. So 4 tickets on the line, 2 for men, 2 for women. We believe that only Ryan Montgomery has a spot into Western States come next June after his 7th place performance there, automatically getting him back to the start line in June. He will be a factor in tomorrow's race. But other than that, we don't have any people with spots secured at Western States. So that probably portends some pretty interesting racing. And I would guess that basically all the athletes who we'll talk about in a second are here chiefly to chase that golden ticket. Coming back to the course, I'd love to just like hear what you guys think about it. Because when you look at the course profile, you know, it basically is like an uphill and a downhill on each loop, right? It's like a very gradual 10-mile climb and a very gradual 10-mile descent. So maybe if there's any like sort of comments about how you would think about that psychologically, because you would have to sort of really, you know, be able to keep a pretty respectable pace on that 10-mile climb and then not burn too hard on the 10-mile descent when you can really open it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's usually like kind of naturally more gifted climbers and descenders, right? But with a race like this, like looking back at previous data, like folks run pretty even laps that do well, right? And so I don't know, if it were me, like I would certainly be trying to like keep it pretty under control on the climb and just trying to recover on the 10-mile descent, like just keeping my heart rate like really in check, running it really even. But I don't know. I'm sure those like final 3 laps, you're going to be feeling the descending.
Well, it's interesting too, because it's like the evenness of pacing, I think, is definitely a factor. But then we have like some dynamic variables like temperature that are changing throughout the day, where like, you know, it will naturally probably make sense that runners first, maybe second laps are a bit quicker. Heat of the day, maybe you're like easing off a little bit. So I think there's some like other interesting factors at play that are
so true,
that are influencing it.
And it is only 7,600 total feet of climbing, so it's not much, but like, I mean, it's enough to make it challenging to not make it like a full on track race. Are there spots where it's like kind of sandy and washed out? Like you can get here and.
Yeah, I would say like a little bit more rocky than sandy. And then like the kind of dirt on the descent is like pretty hard packed. So you can get some good footing there, but like you do go in and out of some washes. So sometimes at the bottom of washes, it can be a little sandy.
Adam, have you done any analysis on like the evenness of loops and those who've performed well here in the past?
Oh gosh, not well enough that I could quote splits, but I remember hearing like Dakota and John's super tight. We're talking like a couple minutes difference on each of their laps as they raced last year to a really tight finish. I think 13:05, 12:58, right? Yeah.
I believe Riley Brady had super even splits on their third, fourth, and fifth laps last year, and like I believe even within a minute or two of each lap.
Wow.
So I can't quote the specific splits, but very metronome like.
Well, that'll be
Yes.
something that we
Yeah.
can watch out for tomorrow. Is
Yeah.
who's running most evenly, especially in those middle couple loops. So then, Abby, you just talked about the weather and how that is going to be a factor and sort of a changing element throughout the day. We're expecting highs of about 85 degrees tomorrow. How would you think about that as a competitor?
I mean, I think cooling strategies are all out, out to play tomorrow. I mean, it'll be full on, people will be coming in and doing their cooling, testing out some, Western States protocol. And I think that's like what makes this a really fun ticket event too, is like you do get this flavor of kind of who's good at managing the heat. And I think that's like such an exciting part of like previewing next year's Western States field. I mean, last year, even as a spectator during the day before my volunteer shift, it definitely still felt properly hot in the heat of the day. And that wasn't even a historic heat year. So yeah, I am impressed by, last year was really impressed seeing runners come in and be managing the splits they were in what felt still like quite a warm day.
Yep. I don't know. I'd be going arm sleeves, doing the evaporative cooling thing, still keeping electrolytes high coming in at 85 degrees. For me, that's still like pretty hot. It'll be interesting.
So are people going to be wearing like ice bandanas and stuff tomorrow, you think?
I bet.
Yeah.
I think so. I think a lot of like sometimes too, like a lot of the Arizona runners down here, I'm wearing one right now, white long sleeve,
Yeah.
And we see that sometimes at Western States too, like just straight up going for keeping that skin covered out of the sun, keeping yourself wet. So
That was the other thing I was going to say too. In those 100 miles, how many of them are you not completely exposed to the sun, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I've heard there's not a lick of shade out there.
Right.
Of
No.
course. So
yeah, no shade at all.
so 85 in the direct sunlight the whole time, it's going to feel warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bucket hats everywhere.
get hats everywhere.
So that'll be an interesting thing for our viewers and listeners to keep track of tomorrow too, is just sort of like who's managing the elements the best, who's protecting themselves from the sun and the heat, because that will obviously make a big difference in the eventual performance. All right. So, well, I guess I also wrote down here the low is 59. So it should be pretty nice in the morning, but then, it's expected to be sort of high 70s around the time we expect the leading men and women to finish tomorrow evening. So it'll be nice in the morning, hot midday, and then still pretty warm into the evening. And then hopefully the middle and the back of the Packers have a beautiful night out there in the desert. And my hope is to be at Jackass until late into Saturday evening, cheering on some of those
vibes high.
Yeah. All right, so let's do some analysis on the field, starting with the women. Maybe I'll just tee you up first here, Abby. Adam and I were just talking about how it feels like both races are pretty wide open. Maybe talk about how you're viewing the field as a whole before we go into some of the specific contenders.
On the women's field specifically? Yeah. So, I think like we've got some really solid Javelina veterans, Riley Brady coming back here from second place last year, third fastest time the women's field scene here. Big returner. Also like a number of people that are coming from races like Black Canyon experience too, which I think is still really applicable here. So you get some of that in the field, but then also we have, like Ragna DeBot's world-class, like long time ultra running champion across, distances from like CCC to Marathon des Sables to sky racing, you name it. And so like, I think there's some different names in here that keep the race super interesting. So yeah, like overall, I think, and like, not to mention like people like Heather Jackson, returning, everyone hungry for a ticket for their own reasons. And I think a number of people that we saw like didn't have their best Western States last year and are returning to a race like this to get a ticket with a bit of that.
Like Riley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Like with that fun chip on their shoulder to like, know what they're capable of and try and put their day together, which I think is always exciting to just see like that strong motivating why for people.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I'm always interested at races like Javelina, like Black Canyon. There's usually this kind of like, oh, like, is this a road runner? Like road runners race?
Yeah.
Are a triathlete going to come in here and like mop the field? But I still feel like I've run a little bit out here on the course. Like I feel like it's a trail runners race, man.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but I'm super excited to see folks like Heather, like put one together out here. She's so bit, right? But I don't know. Don't count Riley out. Like they're super strong too. So I don't know. I think the women's race is very interesting. Male race is interesting. But yeah, what do you think?
I mean, it is interesting what you just said about like whether this is a road runner's race or a mountain runner's race, because like Dakota's a perfect example.
True.
Throughout his entire career, he's been a mountain runner, right? But he's got the course record here at Javelina. Obviously, he's got a lot of range. He's got ridiculous talent. He is fast on flatter, faster stuff. But, you know, maybe it's a change in emphasis, a change in focus from when he changes that specificity of his training. He's able to execute on all different types of terrain. But it is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because like Pat Reagan, you would think of as the opposite end of the spectrum. Somebody who really crushes it on the faster races, who's won here, I think 3 times.
Yes.
So anyway, that's one of the great things about the sport is like there are people that have specialties, right?
Yes.
And then like on a course like this, where might those specialties show themselves? As I look at the women's race, like I always like to divide things between favorites and then sort of the rest of the field. My feeling is that the winner comes from the trifecta of Riley, Ragna, or Heather, personally.
Same.
Not to say there's, you know, there's no possibility of somebody coming from the rest of the really strong group to achieve the victory tomorrow, but that's sort of how I was thinking about it. But then there's a lot of other characters in the field that we can tick through here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just got to give Riley a shout out, fellow Boulderite. You know what I mean? Like crushed it last year, experience at the distance. So yeah, I'm rooting for him.
Have you communicated with Riley at all about Western States?
Not really. Not personally. No.
I wonder how they're feeling about it, because obviously coming back here to Javelina, where Riley had an amazing run last year, I'm sure their goal is to get back to Western States and redeem a 14th place finish. And actually, it's sort of similar with John Ray, right? Mm-hmm. So if we think about who's back from last year, John and Riley both finished second. I'm pretty sure they both finished 14th at Western States.
And I was 14th. And wait, what place were you?
Oh, I don't know.
You weren't? Okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I feel like there's a thing with 14th. As I was looking through this, I was like, it's a lucky number.
That's crazy, that parity between them.
Isn't that funny?
That's
that
really
is funny.
interesting.
Yeah. And John, you know, quiet Boulderite. We'll talk about him in a sec. But I was just looking at like who's been here in the past and performed well here in the past. Both John and Riley have, and then Brett Hornig, who was 4th last year, is back again. Heather Jackson, who was 5th last year, is back again. Ryan Montgomery, who's been on the podium here, is back. But other than that, it feels like a lot of newer characters to Javelina, at least.
Sure. Yeah.
And then a lot of like up and coming people. So like some of the names I wrote down are sort of the people who represent this next generation, people like Shea Aquilano and Tara Dower and things like that. Abby, do you have any color you want to provide on some of the other women?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so yeah, I think we've shouted out Ragna, we've shouted out Riley. Shea Aquilano, for those who aren't familiar, came onto my radar this year at Black Canyon, where she took a tight 6th, for those who remember, just within a couple minutes of Eden Nilsson and Anna Cassius. And so one thing I loved in kind of looking at Shea's history with ultra running is she's returned to Black Canyon 3 times. The first time in 2021, she ran 12:06, came back in 2022, ran 10:18, then came back last year and ran 9:08. So, you know, love seeing a runner like in such an active place of growth. And, you know, I don't think we've even seen her ceiling yet. So
she's 22.
Yeah, she's 20. Yeah, of course we haven't seen her ceiling yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's I believe put in some speedy and heavy training. So, you know, exciting to see an athlete of her caliber like at such a phase of growth. And
and she has run 100 miles before, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's from Indiana, I believe. Still currently lives.
Yeah, recent graduate of Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish.
Yeah.
The home state of our great friend, Mr. Ryan Thrower. So shout out to Indiana.
Yeah, that's right.
Ran a 16-hour 100 at the Indiana Trail Run 100 last year.
Smoking. I'm super curious about Tara. Coming off that Run Rabbit Run performance.
Tough, man.
So, and just a huge year in general.
Yeah.
All right. So I wrote this down. Tara's done 900 milers since October of 21, plus the Colorado Trail.
It's major.
Gnarly.
So she's done 900 milers in 2 years, and she seemingly is, you know, getting better and better and better, you know, as it was exemplified in Steamboat Springs a couple of months ago. When
Third fastest time, women's time ever. Crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Fast.
exciting. I mean, this year she's already done Black Canyon. She did a backyard race in Ohio where she ran 170 miles. She did Hellbender 100. She set the record on the Colorado Trail. She ran Run Rabbit Run, and now she's lining up for Javelina. What a year.
She is
Up and to the right. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
beast.
Crazy.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
She's coached by Carl Meltzer, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a cool anecdote. And going back to the Colorado Trail, 500-mile mission this summer.
Yeah.
And she took down the legendary Betsy Kalmeyer's 20-year-old supported Colorado Trail FKT.
So impressive.
Tara Dower very much on the ascent here. And yeah, like Run Rabbit is a higher profile North American race. If she was able to win or be on the podium here, I think it'd be really good for her career. And then especially if we looked ahead towards Western States, if she was able to secure a golden ticket. It's sort of like athletes like Tara, it's like, you slowly start to make your name for yourself, and then eventually there's a huge exclamation point, and maybe tomorrow is that big exclamation point. And that sort of happened for both you guys and for me in my career too.
Yeah.
Totally.
Heather Jackson,
Yeah.
talk.
Oh man. I mean, just like all the potential, you know what I mean? Like she's such an amazing athlete. I'm curious, like I was looking at her Strava. It's like, man, nothing on here. It's like run training. At least I couldn't see any, right?
Yeah.
So I always have that question mark, right? With people like that. It's like, I wish I could see, I wish I could know, but everyone knows she's going to be so fit. I think she had kind of a tough day at States too, right? It's got the same hunger, desire to get back. I'd love to see her like do what she's capable of out here tomorrow. I don't know. I think she could crush.
Yeah. And like in typical Heather form, sounds like she just like raced a big gravel race last weekend. Like a really, like, I don't know a ton about gravel racing, but like a big, like high profile one too, like part of the Unbound race series or whatever out in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I think it's so fascinating what she's doing right now.
Yes.
And it could like totally revolutionize the way people approach the sport and how they train. You've been hitting the bike a lot recently for other reasons.
Exactly.
Maybe we can talk about that. Ryan and I were in Tucson last week filming a training day with Heather, and I sort of like hung on to her last workout of the training block.
Love
and
it.
I was completely blown out afterwards, but we had such a good time hanging out with Heather and her husband, Waddy, in Tucson. And she was devastated from the Western States disappointment this year where she DNF'd at Michigan Bluff.
Yeah.
And I know she's desperate to get back into that race. So she's very much here for that golden ticket. And if she continues in this direction, and we should say too that she is so vociferous in her love for the trail running community, which makes me so happy.
Love her for that. Yeah.
Someone who's been a lifelong athlete. She played ice hockey at the University of Princeton back in the day.
That's
she was
awesome.
a pro triathlete. Now she's a pro trail runner and a pro gravel racer, and she glows about trail running, which just makes me feel like I'm not crazy. That we're all not crazy.
And like Western States kind of uniquely was what drew her into the sport, right? Is that it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was funny because the workout that we did was sort of a carryover from her last big workout that she always did before Ironman Kona, the Ironman World Championship.
Are you at liberty to say what it was?
Yeah, so we made a video about it. You got to watch it.
Okay, yeah.
So it was basically just on the Ironman Hawaii course, there's a hill called Palani Hill, and it's apparently like kind of a crux moment on the run course.
Yes.
So what she did, and it's only like a minute long climb. So she's got a bunch of hills in her neighborhood there in Tucson that are roughly similar to the Palani. So basically she's just doing like 5 by 1 minute hill reps. And then immediately after the fifth goes into a 10-minute tempo. And she says, I mean, because that was only 10 days out from Javelina.
Yeah.
And she was saying that, typically in a bigger volume phase, she'll do like 6 reps into a 40-minute tempo. So imagine that. And then do that twice. So 5 by 1 minute and then 40-minute tempo, 5 by 1 minute, 40-minute tempo.
That's what I'm saying. That's some next level shit. You know what I mean? Like that's some triathlete, like professional shit. That's awesome.
That is volume at intensity.
Wow.
And she splits time, right? Between Tucson and, is it Bend?
Bend, yeah. So they've been in Tucson training. So again, and this is sort of something that we can talk about in the men's race too. Like Zach Bitter lives nearby here and Heather lives nearby. It'll be interesting to see if that plays to their advantage. But so just Heather Jackson, sort of the story of the year, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's now been a full year since she's been a member of the trail running community. And this is sort of like you know, in 5 starts, 3 of them have been 100 milers, including tomorrow.
Wow.
You know, Javelina, Western States, and then Javelina tomorrow. She's only done a couple other 50Ks and Black Canyon. So anyway, Heather Jackson, all-star. I wanted to give a couple more. Well, we should talk about Riley.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't gone into deep detail.
Yeah.
Boulderite.
yeah, Boulderite.
They won Gorge 100K in the spring.
Shout out Gorge.
Shout out Gorge. 14th Western States. I guess we did talk about this, but top returning finisher, 3rd fastest time.
Yep.
So Riley Brady, name to look out for. I don't know if you had anything to add, but I guess we did talk about it already. But
Yeah, I don't know. I just, I think they've been putting in really solid training. Like, sounds like maybe a little higher volume than in the past. I'm excited to see how and if that translates for them. I picked them to win. You know what I mean? So like, that's my horse.
And I think they have like quite an extensive 100-mile history.
Yes.
Like when I was perusing Ultra Sign Up, like
Right.
quite a number of 100-milers, kind of like originating back from the East Coast, seemed like. And then did they move to Boulder? Was it this year?
Yeah, I think it was earlier this year. Yeah.
Cool. And I mean, I feel like that move to Boulder, I mean, speaking as a fellow Boulderite, we
Yes.
all share Boulder here.
The
Like
pilgrimage.
it's such a like exciting, like just an exciting place to like grow as an
Yeah.
ultra runner. And I'm
Yes.
excited to see that they're like in this nurturing environment to, you know, like continue that growth.
does
Yeah.
Riley have a coach?
I believe she's coached by David Roach.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I had a couple other names written down here, just some other factors who are sort of probably flying under the radar, but interesting and should be competitive. Lindsay Dwyer from Marin County recently won the Yeti 100 back in June. And she was, I think, 5th at the Canyons 100 in April. Selena Langner, I just saw for the first time at Mammoth Trail Fest, 3rd place in the 50K there. And she at the finish line was like glowing about it. Like, I'm excited to go do 100 miles at Javelina. Sarah Beal, who won JFK last year.
So fast.
And broke Ellie Greenwood's course record.
So fast.
Incredible.
I'm curious to see how she does at this race. Like,
Yeah.
100 miles. Has she done a 100 miler?
Good question.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I wrote first 100 miler
Debut.
down.
Super
so.
exciting.
Yeah.
Any other names that you guys want to mention? Any shout outs you want to give, or any like maybe comments on the expected dynamic in the women's race before we move on to the men?
Couple other names.
Like, is
I
Heather
had-
Jackson going for it tomorrow?
Well, I mean, we definitely saw that last year, right? With like she led the first 3-4 laps or something
Yeah, 3
before
laps.
before
Like 80
Devin
miles
ultimately
or something. It was
passed.
a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think she led through about 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, if we'll see that same strategy, but with, you know, different kind of problem solving skills late in the race, or if we will see like a more conservative approach.
I hope she goes for it again.
I do
Me
too.
too.
Like that.
I just think that changes the whole dynamic of the
Yeah.
race, especially when people are here knowing like, okay, I need to be top 2
Yeah.
in order to get a ticket. If one person goes hot off the front, it puts pressure on everybody else.
Yep.
And then you see ripple effects, and then you usually do see some attrition
Yeah.
when that's the case, especially as the day heats up.
Yeah.
Any other names?
I see, I picture Heather and maybe Ragna like going harder off the front early with then like maybe a chase pack of like Riley, Shay, Tara, with maybe Riley being able to like bridge that gap into or like pick up where those leaders are dropping off late in the race. I picture Riley running a bit more evenly and methodically.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And then I think a couple other names that I had on my list that we didn't mention yet were Nicole Monette, who has run a super speedy 100K world champs at like, you know, cranking off, ran a 7:34 100K. So certainly knows how to click off the miles. And, you know, I think just in general, like we see a different set of names at this race than we do at like some of the mountainous ultras. And I guess like one thought in general I've been having about the race is that, you know, this is kind of like the biggest, the biggest race of this genre that we've got, I think, in the world. Like, I can't think of a flat 100-miler that has a bigger pull and better field than this. So it's pretty cool to just see like the corner of the sport that this race is carving
That's a good
out.
point.
And just like the set of names that we see here really isn't overlapping hardly at all with people that we see trying to go for like UTMB
That's a great
events.
point.
That's one of the things I was going to say too, is like, aside from Ragna, we don't have really any European talent, where like at Black Canyon, Tom Evans came over, Ida Nilsson came over. There was one or two others. Jonas Kowalczyk came over. And of course, the Europeans, most of the bigger name athletes you associate with mountain courses. So maybe not surprising that we're not seeing more European exposure here at Javelina. But yeah, it is like, to me, it feels like a race that's probably really difficult to get right because there's not a lot of variables. So it's like all about execution and pacing. But then when you add in the complication of no shade and heat, I don't know, it feels like the type of race where if you thread the needle, you can really tee one up like Dakota did last year. But if any little thing goes wrong, those last couple laps could be a major sufferfest.
Yeah, I think it's like, because it's so even, like there's less margin for error.
Totally.
And so, even things like, crew pit stop time length starts to be a factor, and just like every little second starts to add up versus like in a mountainous ultra where you're seeing bigger swings and splits, or, I felt good on the climb, but I picked up on the descent or found new legs here. So
true. Yeah. And especially compared to like John and Dakota's race from last year, like I wonder how much of that might have been decided by crew decisions.
So talk about the crew experience here. Is it that everybody sort of camps out at Javelina headquarters?
Yeah.
So they basically get crew every 20 miles.
Yeah.
Maybe paint the picture of what headquarters is like and the crew transition.
Yeah. So I believe, like, I'm not sure of the exact athlete logistics, but I believe you get like a tent spot assigned to you, or you can reserve one for like your crew to kind of set up at. So all of your stuff is kind of like static and there like for most of the day. And then people are often like sharing tent structures or things like that just to unite under the shade. But then I think runners are seeing 2 other aid stations per lap without crew, where sometimes they can have drop bags.
They don't go any longer than about 6 miles.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Yeah. So frequent opportunities for cooling, for fluids. But then, crew is all centrally located all day. So it's a pretty easy one-stop shop for crew.
And you're going to be doing it tomorrow. We'll get to that in a second. But one, maybe a little teaser for our audience too. I guess it's really only applicable to those who are going to be here. But I heard from Matt Feldick, who's of course the director of marketing at Javelina and who manages a lot of their live streaming logistics, that there's going to be basically like a Jumbotron at headquarters playing the live stream all day.
Sick.
I love that.
Amazing.
Further enhancing the Burning Man vibe.
Which is so great, because I feel like at some of these races, like I think even at Black Canyon in the spring, it's like we're all sitting there on our phones watching it. And then like the poor people that are like tracking race times and things can't get service because we're all just like hogging the service, streaming the same video on 500 phones.
Yes.
I'm so looking forward to it. Hopefully I can squeeze it around in the morning and then just hang out at headquarters and watch the Jumbotron all day.
I love it.
Real quick while we're on that crewing thing, what do you guys think for like racers in terms of the shoe choice? Is it a road shoe or a trail shoe decision?
I've run like a transition gravel shoe type thing.
Yeah.
Transition gravel shoe. Okay.
Yeah.
I've run in both over there and been happy in both over there.
Okay.
I think like probably some of it comes down to cushioning underfoot a little bit more and like what you're preferring over the course of 100 miles. But in terms of like outsole, I think you can get away with a lot there.
Maybe we'll see some carbon out there, some carbon fiber on the trail.
For sure.
No doubt.
Sure. It's all the rage.
All right, let's talk about the men. Okay, so tell me whether I'm right or wrong here. Again, I like to think of things as favorites and then sort of like dark horses. And I wrote down my 3 favorites being John Ray, again, second place last year, Ryan Montgomery, who's been second place in the past, and then I put down Ryan Miller. Tell me why I'm wrong, Adam.
Because Matt's my boy, dude, and I got him instead of Ryan Miller. No, I mean, John Ray for sure. That guy's a stud, man. Yeah. The way he trains, he's so good at racing. Yeah. He loves it. Like, I don't know, super analytical, tactical racer.
Do you know him well? Because he strikes me as like one of those silent assassins, you know? I got to chat with him a little bit at UTMB after his awesome CCC, where he finished fourth, top American at CCC. But he was second here last year. He's done a lot of other like really impressive finishes, but he's not the type of guy who posts a lot on Instagram. You don't really hear a lot about John Ray, but he lives in the Boulder bubble. So
He does. I feel like he and I are kind of kindred spirits in a way. We both have like day jobs that make it kind of hard to line up. He runs super early. He's in South Boulder. I'm in North Boulder. So we don't get a chance to line up, but it's not for a lack of wanting to. He's a super nice guy. I know he and Matt train a fair amount together. He's fit, man. That's the thing. Every race he goes into, he's really fit. I feel like, he's trying to get back into states after, again, like underperforming his potential for sure.
Which he's done twice now.
He's done twice.
Yeah. I'm sure
I'm
sure he really wants to tee up Western States. Like he's got the tools for that course in that race. And, 2 years ago, I remember during the broadcast, Corinne and I were saying, watch out for John Ray. Cause he was moving up. He had moved into the top 5 and then just kind of cracked on Cal Street and suffered into 11th. Similar thing happened this year, suffered into 14th. So hopefully, for his sake, he can put himself in position for a golden ticket again.
Yeah.
Abby, any more insights on John?
Yeah. I guess, just worth noting too, second fastest time here ever, just 7 minutes back from Dakota last year. And I think they were, maybe, I don't know quite the time split, but similar at CCC, went 3-4 at CCC.
Yes.
So interesting that they both kind of, shared a couple of recent racing experiences not too far from each other, but the top returner this year. So
sorry, Dakota was top American at CCC.
Yeah.
Abby, it reminds me though, this maybe is something interesting that you could talk about, having done CCC and finished on the podium there yourself a couple of times. Looking at John's season, having the disappointment at Western States and then having a great one at CCC, it sort of feels like that is a good race and good timing between then and now to then, recover from that 100K performance and stimulus and then use it to sort of launch forward to a final end of year 100 miler. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually think that CCC recovery has always gone pretty smooth for me. And I think can tee up runners pretty well in all honesty. Less damage in the legs to recover from compared to say Western States where you're just using, more similar muscles all day. But I think it's a perfectly appropriate time gap between, great performance at CCC and enough time to turn around a good training block for the specificity required for Javelina. So I think it works.
Yeah. You mentioned Ryan Montgomery as well. I'm very curious to see how he races tomorrow and what dynamic that brings out between someone like John, who's got experience on the course too, has run really fast, but Ryan's unburdened. He doesn't need a ticket.
Exactly.
Right. The only person in the field who doesn't need a ticket.
Yeah.
So does that freedom benefit performance, or do you need that carrot to really dig as deep as you need to go?
I definitely think he's going to send it for the first few loops.
Ryan's really interesting, man. He's the ultimate competitor. He really believes in himself, and he's really experienced too.
He is.
He's maybe 30 years old. He's run more 100 milers than I have.
I was going to say maybe the most experienced 100 miler in the field.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, very experienced. And I think based on the type of races we've seen him successful at, something like Javelina is totally his sweet spot. Yeah.
And remember, was it 2 years ago? He came out and did a training block out here.
Oh, really?
Did 3 or 4 days, 25 miles a day.
Really?
So he's got reps on the course too.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Well, you were second here that year.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Ryan Montgomery coming off an awesome 7th place at Western States. I know he was super proud of that one. And it'll be great to see him build on that at Western States in 2024. But the only person in the field who's going to be competitive for the podium or for the win who doesn't have to think about the golden ticket conversation. I also mentioned Ryan Miller, the Texan,
Dude,
coming here to Arizona.
I love Ryan too. Such a nice guy.
Sweetie pie.
Spent a couple days with him in Bandera training for that a couple years ago.
He's an interesting story, right? Because a couple years ago at Bandera, he came out of nowhere and won the race, got his golden ticket, suffered at Western States, DNF, and he's been desperate to get back ever since.
Yeah.
I love that.
And he's taken multiple swings. He went to both canyons and Black Canyon.
Yep.
And he's come up short.
Dude, he is a 214 guy.
Yeah.
He is so fast. Just popped one off at the Kauai 50.
Yeah.
Beat Raj.
Wow.
Super fast. Again, it's putting it together for 100 in the heat is no joke.
Yeah, he's got that Texas in him.
Yeah, I'd love to see Ryan do well. Yeah.
And he's already registered for both Javelina and Black Canyon, which again, I love to see it. Just that, we're doing this.
Yes,
book the hotels.
No question what the goal is. Maybe set up camp in Arizona for the next 4 months.
Exactly.
Father of 2, also only 31 years old. The dad's in the audience here.
Love that.
He's got the dad strength.
Got to root for the dad. Dad strength is a complete fabrication. We all know dad strength doesn't exist.
Now, shout out Free Trail Fantasy though. Let's squabble over our third pick. because I picked Matt in my top 3 too.
Yeah.
And I feel like runners at this race, at least on the men's side, like the leg speed thing is like a component, right? You got to have like a requisite amount of leg speed. Matt Daniels, crazy leg speed.
Yep.
Similar to Ryan Miller, like a lot of road track experience. Matt didn't have a great day here last year. Also very desperate to get back into Western States. And I think in terms of like pure talent and like running capability, he's right up there, if not at the top in this field for me.
100%. If at the start line tomorrow we saw like them say, hey, newsflash, we're going to change this into an all-out 10K, we would see an incredible field because the collegiate and track background, especially with some of the men tomorrow, is like top-notch, world-class. So you've got, people like Matt, people like Ryan Raff, super speedy.
People like this guy with the last name Dragon.
Yeah.
You know that guy?
No, I don't know.
Dude, he's like a 28-40 10K guy.
Yes.
Freaking crazy. I forget his first name. Maybe Zach Dragon. Shout out Dragon. Great last name.
Shout out Dragon.
Yeah. But there's a ton of leg speed in this race. So I got Matt in my top 3 too, rooting for him.
So let's talk about Matt, because he's a training buddy, a good friend of yours, and a guy who I really, think highly of also. And it feels to me like, it always comes down to the psychology with him. And he just suffered through a 29-hour UTMB.
Yes.
And to me, it was like so good to see, just like march it out, get it done, put it on the board, and then build from it.
Yes.
And like, I really wonder if just that proving to himself of like, I'm just going to finish. All my goals are out the window. I'm still getting to the finish line.
Yes.
If that in some way gives him a little bit extra strength and confidence going into tomorrow.
I think that's something probably a lot of runners in the field can like empathize with or understand. Like I know for Matt, that was transformational. He texted me from Courmayeur. He's like, dude, I'm going to die in Italy in the middle of the night, and it's like, I think a lot of people go through that in 100, like, right. Javelina tomorrow, there's going to be people who are like cracking and just getting it done. Like, I think it changed something in Matt. So I'm rooting for him.
As someone I've marched out, my first couple 100-milers, and I think that was like a super formative thing. Just super humbling, and especially for someone of Matt's talent level and just like, work ethic when it comes to like his hard training, his sub 4-minute mile, right? Like, I mean, his potential is limitless. So I think to see him like also experience the other end of things is like a cool, maybe like new starting point for him in his career.
It reminds me at Gorge too, this spring, he won the 50K and he was 12 minutes back at like mile 20.
It's like something switched.
And exactly. Just a switch flipped. He started racing like aggressive and angry almost.
Running low 5s at the end of the race.
He was flying.
Yeah.
Absolutely flying.
Yeah.
So it just, I think is illustrative of the fact that like when his head game's there, he's very hard to beat. Yeah. So, and you're going to be on the crew there tomorrow.
That's right, man. I'm going to be out there, vibes high, maybe get to pace a little bit. We'll see. But a
little bit. You're saying 40 miles.
A lot. Yeah, I hope to get a good long run in. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I might have to throw together a quick costume. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. But who else is in your top 5, man?
Well, all right. So other names here. So I'll just tee up a bunch and then you guys can.
Well, wait, can I share my other top third pick first? So before we go into those other names, I've got Preston Cates as my third. And so, he's a fellow Flagstaffer. I'm super excited about him.
I like it.
Making his 100-mile debut, comes from a collegiate background. But he's like a really interesting character in this field. I think his approach, his mindset is really interesting. He's someone who's very growth minded, has really, he's another born and raised in Boulder, actually. And he, moved out to Flagstaff, I think like around when Cordis and I did, and has just been enjoying making it his home and like falling in love with the sport and growing a lot. He came out here in, I think it was September, and did another Aerovipe event that's here on course, 75K, and he got the course record at that. So he's super speedy. Another one of these like super fast collegiate background guys that I'm excited to see what he'll do in his 100-mile debut. And I think he's someone too who like really really empties himself out there.
He seems like a character. I don't know him well, but he seems
is
like
a
he's
character.
got charisma
He
and like
does.
an energy to him.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. I ran into him at the gym in Flagstaff this week, and he shared his costume with me, which I was very excited to hear about. So you all have to tune into the live stream so you can get the visuals on not only his costume, but his whole crew. It sounds like they're all in on kind of one group costume.
Yeah.
Well, that separates him from the field. That's dope. I got to do a group run with Preston earlier this year in Boulder. He was out there. He's great, man. He's fit, fellow Nike Trail athlete. So I don't know, man. He's hungry. He hasn't done 100.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I didn't have him.
He's had kind of a sneaky good season. He was fourth at Way Too Cool. He was third at Lake Sonoma, where he got a qualifier for Worlds. He won that race you mentioned here in Arizona. He won the Tamalpa Headlands and Marin. So yeah, he's been solid and consistent all year. So just sort of building probably towards this crescendo at the end of the year. So I'm glad you brought him up.
Love to see him have a good one.
Yeah.
Few other names here. I'll just toss them out. We should probably start winding down. But a lot of other men that could compete tomorrow. I just wrote down Brett Hornig, who was fourth last year. String Beans in the field.
Gosh.
Always consistent and strong.
Yeah.
Blake Slatengren, who was second at Gorge this year, sort of a quiet Pacific Northwestern guy. Ryan's boy. Zach Bitter.
Bitter, dude.
Yeah.
Stud.
So fast.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you seen what he put out about the training he's done leading up to this?
No.
So he put up a graphic on Twitter with just a summary of all his training in the last 4 weeks. It was 522 miles, tons of strength and mobility sessions, the type of dude who just nails all the fundamentals and does big volume. And he's got tons of experience.
Dude, that's scary because isn't he also coming off a stress fracture? Yeah. So I feel like he could be super fresh.
Yeah.
And wanting it, you
know?
know?
Like a renewed, lease on the sport.
Yes.
So.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in my top 5 on Fantasy Free Trail, So.
For sure.
Any other things before we start winding down here?
We've got a good contingent also of kind of some of the 200-mile folks, Michael Veerstig and Jeff Garnmeyer for the FKT incline.
They'll just be getting warmed up after the fifth lap.
Exactly.
I feel like he's going to have a good costume.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Garnmeyer has done every Cocodona. And that's only the tip of the iceberg for him.
His list of FKTs is unbelievable. I mean, took the JMT FKT from String Bean, shortly after String Bean said it, I believe. Fun. So yeah. But it's fun. We've got people coming from that super long background, from a track background. I mean, it's the kind of meeting grounds for all of these different kinds of athletes.
Right now. From triathlon.
Yeah, it's great.
And just to put a little more respect on Brett Hornig's name, I mean, he ran so well here last year. For me, it's he's right there on the cusp. So I'd love to see him have a great day too.
Yeah.
Great guy,
absolutely.
Too. All right, so let's make our picks. And we should say fantasy.freetrail.com.
Yep.
Get your picks in. Our great sponsor, Hoka, has some great prizes on the line here. Head to toe kit for the best predictor tomorrow. So head to toe, you're going to be looking like Jim Walmsley. You're probably going to win UTMB afterwards.
Does it come with the bucket hat,
Maybe we'll come with a bucket hat. We'll twist somebody's arm there at headquarters in Santa Barbara. Second and third place also going to get fresh pair of, I think, Stinson 7 Hoka shoes. So fantasy.freetrail.com. Get your picks in. Go top 5. I don't have my top 5 up in front of me, but I did pick John Ray and Heather Jackson to win tomorrow's race. Who do you got?
I have Riley winning, and I have Matt Daniels winning. Riley, Brady, Matt Daniels.
The Boulder duo. Come on, you homer.
Hey,
you homer.
I've got Ragna DeVos winning and John Ray winning. Ray winning. Yeah.
Great.
Are we safe in assuming course records are not going down tomorrow?
I mean, John was not far off from Dakota last year.
Isn't it going to be hotter this year?
I think it's going to be about the same.
Okay.
I think last year was low 80s, high of low to mid 80s. And I think we're similar to that tomorrow.
So we should mention Camille's time is an outlier on
that.
That
is not going down.
Yeah.
That is safe.
Because I think Devin has the second fastest time, 30 minutes
later. Yeah.
Who's also very fast,
incredible athlete.
Yeah. I don't think the women's course record's going down, but men's course record
could happen.
I think it could happen, man. MFers are hungry out here. You know what I mean? I think it could go down.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see where Hal Kerner falls. Sweating out the IPAs from last night. Abby, what are you going to be up to on the course tomorrow?
Cordis and I are crewing a group of 4 runners from Boulder mostly. And they're all friends that I think are kind of like stealthily entering this and didn't really tell anyone they're doing it. So
Okay.
I won't mention who they are, but we'll be out there crewing a bunch of them. And then I'll be joining you on Sunday.
Heck yes.
Epic.
Any closing comments from you, Mr. Mary?
No, I'll be out there as well. So come say hi if you see me. I've got my son and my wife out here. I think they both got a costume lined up too.
Yes.
But nah, man, it's exciting. This is what it's all about. Big community gathering tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to a day of racing. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Super, super fun to break down all of the drama here ahead of the race tomorrow. Remember, to our viewing audience, watch the live stream tomorrow. We'll put a link in the description here on YouTube and in the podcast feed where you can find it over on the Mountain Outpost YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to their channel. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Please hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. Like Abby just said, we will be back here on Sunday morning. We'll debrief all of what we witnessed out on the race course tomorrow. Ryan and I are going to look forward to having a good day out in the sunshine, getting some miles, capturing some content, and generally soaking up the vibe of this classic North American 100-mile race. Again, we're going to hope to get some of the top performers in studio poolside with us on Sunday. And maybe we'll be wearing costumes to wind down the weekend. But appreciate everybody for listening, for joining us. Abby Hall, Adam Mary, I'm Debo. See you on Sunday.